Thanks for listening to Don't Walk Into Traffic, the podcast where we talk about what's happening, what's coming, and how we're getting through it. We're back from some extended time off. I'm Patty and Jeremy. How are you doing?
Hi, Patty. I'm doing well. It's good to see you again. I
Yeah,
know
it's
we've
been a
both had,
while.
yeah, it has been. I'd like to say it was a nice, relaxing, quiet few weeks off, but I think we both had a lot in our lives happening.
Twas not.
And it's good to get together with you on a Sunday morning and recap. We're not going to recap 5 weeks of what went on, but just some things and to see your face. And I have a funny thing. I caught myself this morning. I had like one of those, I don't know what it is, like, oh my God, this is my life. And it's not like the worst thing, like a getting older moment.
Yeah.
But I got up this morning and was like, oh, I need to get my coffee and do some reading for the pod. And the first thought I had of something I needed to do was go out and look at some new grass seed we planted in the yard. And it says 3 to 5 days, and we only put it there 2 days ago. And I went out there and I didn't see new seedlings coming up. So I was like, God, this is taking forever, and realized that we put them out on Friday and it's just Sunday. So anyway, I'm cooked.
You know what? Honestly, no. Let all of us be more concerned about the grass lately, please.
I mean, I'm not only touching grass, I'm planting it.
See, look at you,
Yeah,
furthering humanity with your grass seed.
right. So that was definitely my moment of zen this morning, and things are good. It's good to see you again.
Yeah. So there's a few things we want to talk about this week. One of them is a story that has gotten very much under my skin that broke earlier this week. And when I say it has gotten under my skin, I feel like I'm losing sleep about this one.
Mm.
And instead of jumping right into the story, we're going to do a little bit of a thought exercise.
Okay.
Think of a woman you care about deeply, maybe a partner, a sibling, a friend, or a parent. Think for a moment about some of the things you love about this woman, her wit, her laugh, her fire, all of the reasons why you care so much about her. One day, she tells you she has a terrible headache, like nothing she's felt before. She goes to the hospital. They give her some painkillers and send her home. They run no tests, perform no scans, and she goes home still in pain. The next morning, she's slurring her words, unable to walk, to move. She's rushed to the hospital, and it's discovered she has several blood clots in her brain, causing a massive stroke. She is gone. Her brain is dead. Her family wishes to take her off life support and let her die with dignity. However, hospital officials deny this request, as she's 9 weeks pregnant, and taking the woman off of life support would also kill the fetus, which violates state abortion laws. So for 3 months, your friend, sister, lover, she's kept alive by artificial means. It should be noted, brain death is not a coma. Brain death stops her body's ability to control temperature, hormonal production. Her kidneys stop being able to process fluids and she dehydrates. Her skin begins to ulcerate and become infected. She has to have a tracheostomy because someone can only be intubated for a couple of weeks. And her lungs continually fill up with fluid. Every bout of resulting pneumonia risks creating drug-resistant bacterial infections. The fetus being kept alive inside of her decaying body is likely not going to make it to term. It has extreme hydrocephaly, which is fluid on the brain. If it is able to survive until birth, it will be blind, deaf, severely mentally and physically handicapped. It will likely be kept artificially alive as well. Meanwhile, the family of this woman wants none of this. You want none of this for her. You and they want to let their daughter go. They want to give their daughter's other child, who will lose their mother at just 5 years old, the chance to grieve, to understand and internalize the death of their mother, not just see her as sleeping. And when the inevitable does happen, this family will be saddled with the hospital bills. An ICU stay of this length can cost millions of dollars, on top of the trauma of losing their child. If the fetus survives to term, the family will then also be responsible for all of the cost of its care for as long as it lives. Imagine this woman, your friend, your lover, sibling, whomever, all of the light and life gone from her, reduced simply to an incubator. This is currently happening to a young woman named Adriana Smith in Georgia. She was denied proper medical care on a hospital visit for extreme headaches, ended up brain dead, is now being forced to be kept artificially alive to potentially birth a fetus that will most likely not make it to term anyway, because it is so sick and handicapped. But if it does, will not have any quality of life. Like, this was a plot of The Handmaid's Tale. Like, this was an episode of The Handmaid's Tale, which I think is part of why it resonated. But it was also shockingly a plot on Grey's Anatomy, which I had forgotten until my sister and I were talking about it. And they did the right thing on that show. But, reality is stranger than fiction.
Right.
My heart is so broken for this family who just wants to let their daughter go and who just wants to grieve, and instead is going to be charged millions and millions of dollars for the opportunity to see their child waste away. Their child who has a child already that will not know peace until this is over. And I don't know how to reconcile that. There is not a law, there is not a policy, there is not anything that you can propose or tell me that makes this okay.
Yeah, it's a heartbreaking story. And there's so much that comes to mind. I mean, I guess when you say there's no law, there is a law that is keeping the family from being the decision makers. So there is that law.
Yes, and it's because Georgia has a heartbeat bill, basically, when it comes to abortion rights. And because the fetus was 9 weeks when Adriana died, I mean, let's be honest, this woman is not alive anymore.
Right.
No doctor is willing to face the consequences of pulling the plug.
And in a perfect world, that wouldn't even be a scenario. Like, it shouldn't be the doctor's responsibility. The two situations are different, but when my dad had his final days, we found my dad on the living room floor. He had essentially, was later documented in the coroner's report, that he had a heart attack, but he died from ALS. And there was the situation that you speak of where a family is forced to make a decision. These are not rash decisions. Also, these are decisions they're very painful. It's not a quick decision. I think that's the other thing too, is that this, not enough emphasis is put on the fact that this family sat down and made a decision. And it took me quite a bit of time to not reconcile the decision that I made when my family was talking about it. We all agreed. We didn't want my dad to be there as, let's just put it, based on our spiritual beliefs. My dad was no longer there.
Mm-hmm.
A big part of the grieving process is laying the body to rest.
Yeah.
To not think of that body laying in a hospital, unattended, on a machine, etc. And in this case, I can't imagine the grief and trauma that a situation like this presents a family in a really difficult situation, a really heartbreaking situation too. It's like you said, going from headaches to brain dead in a short amount of time. No one is going to be ready for that. I think that it's a really disgusting indictment on, I don't know who to lay it on, humanity perhaps, but this is a very, very poor view of what, quote unquote, right to life and death on that debate. This is a very, very poor example of the morality involved. Not morality necessarily, well, somewhat morality involved in a tough decision like this. It does not seem like a common sense solution, so to speak. The solution should be with the family.
Correct. If this poor woman would have been in a car crash and would have died, and her fetus would have died. And that would have been the end of it. And a family could bury their daughter and their mother and move on. And instead, to put some timing on it, she was 9 weeks pregnant when this happened. She's now 21 weeks pregnant. She has been on life support for 3 months, and they are expecting to try and keep her alive for another 9 weeks to try and get her to 30 weeks if that fetus is still viable. This is going to, kind of tie into some things that are in the next topic we're going to talk about. But it's very quickly becoming clear that women, I don't know how to say this without freaking myself out even more. Women have been reduced to another status in this country. And it started when the right to choose was taken away. And now we are but incubators. When I lost my dad, it was a very similar situation, except the miracle of all miracles is that he was lucid enough to make the decision himself, to say he didn't want to fight anymore. He was done. We did the same thing. We took him off of his oxygen and he slowly died. But he got to die. He got to die with dignity and with respect.
There's a complete and utter lack of dignity in the way this is being handled. Right.
Correct. So something else that I think is bothering me about this, and it's because it's hitting me in kind of a personal spot, is the cost that's associated with all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Her family is looking at a $2 to $3 million medical bill. Adriana was a nurse, so I'm assuming she's insured. I don't know what happens if you go brain dead though. Like, are you still alive enough to have an insurance policy? I don't know how that works.
I have no idea. And
I don't know if she's dead, is the fetus then covered? If it's born with immense disability? Healthcare in this country is a joke. Insurance in this country is a joke. And the way we treat women in this country is also a joke. Part of the reason for our extended delay, and I was diagnosed a week and a half ago with stage 1 cervical cancer. I'm going to be fine. It's going to be fine. It's very treatable, there's a simple surgery that makes it curative. However, that surgery requires general anesthesia. And I was informed yesterday when my doctor went to do the pre-authorization for the procedure that my insurance company doesn't want to cover the anesthesia. They think I should have a different procedure that doesn't require general anesthesia, but is almost equally as painful. So my doctor is currently fighting it out with them. This is, again, something that's going to pop up in the next story we talk about. But some of that is because of AI decision-making.
Oh, boy.
But the people who are being affected by this are women of color. Something about this feels like an omen for something so much worse, and I can't put my finger on it. I don't know what that's going to be. But for maybe the first time, and as long as I've lived, I've never lived anywhere but this country. I'm scared. I'm legitimately scared for what my future looks like as a woman, as a queer woman. I cannot figure out what we do from this point.
Yeah, this is one of those moments where as a cis male, I'm lacking the correct words for this. But it's I don't know.
Well, the good news is I don't think there are any correct words.
Yeah, never mind.
You're not going to strike out too bad. But yeah, and this is a story that I feel like isn't getting a lot of traction. I feel like if more people knew about what was happening, more people would be shouting about it from the rooftops.
I would agree with that. And I think what goes into this that's an obvious side note is that this is a media commentary in a way, but this story is a story of deep significance to the human condition. And it's another political soccer ball, right? Like the only way I see it is being framed. It's, obviously for obvious reasons, it's framed under the abortion discussion, but dare I say it might be even a larger issue than that people who would maybe be pro-life would even look at this and go, oh my God.
I found out about this story not on Twitter, where I receive most of my information anymore, but on TikTok. And something that keeps popping up in the comment sections of these TikTok stories that are sharing it is that this is a miracle. It's a miracle that, we have such scientific advances that we can keep this woman alive, air quotes, to give birth to this, whatever it's going to be. Like, first of all, you don't get to pick and choose scientific miracles. It's a scientific miracle that we have vaccines, buddy. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Instead, we've got 1,100 cases of measles nationwide now. But also, like, I believe that life is miraculous, and artificial life, keeping this woman whose body is decaying, like, you cannot stop that process. You can try and keep a body as healthy as possible, but it's a natural process. The brain controls so many things that when it stops working, there are things that are just not going to keep happening. That's not a miracle. That's torture.
Right.
And I don't care if she can't feel it. Her family can. And her child, her 5-year-old child, is being tortured by this.
I understand the idea of like advances in science to enable people who, let's just say, like having boy, I'm really at a loss for words right now.
This is a tough one.
I understand the concept of science evolving to the fact that maybe a blind person could see some sort of the idea of enhancement of life.
Yes, but not the prolonging of whatever this is.
Right. Yeah, not a prolonging of a state of personal purgatory. Yeah, totally. I don't know that was and is ever the explicit goal of science, so to speak.
Correct.
And if you're considering that a miracle, I hate to see what else you have on the list.
Right.
Jesus.
Oh, man. Okay. So, if you are a listener that happens to live in Georgia, please reach out to your governor. They signed this law into effect. If there's anybody who could issue some kind of executive order to stop this hospital from torturing this woman, their governor could do it.
Right.
Won't, but could. But please, this woman doesn't have a voice anymore, and her family is tied down with watching their daughters be in this situation. So please, if you have the opportunity to speak out for her, please do so. Quit being naughty. Quit it. Yeah, you're a good boy, huh?
We're back.
Yeah, right. Sunny is also back from hiatus.
Apparently.
Are you? Are you going to be good? So, to transition not so smoothly into our next story, this week, the big, beautiful tax bill from Donald Trump died in committee in the House. Thank God.
Is that really? I'm struggling to understand this real quick, because when I was reading the story, it was referenced that several times as the big, beautiful tax bill. Is that literally the working name?
It's not the working name. It's what Trump called it, was his big, beautiful tax bill.
Oh, okay. Because I saw somebody criticizing it and using that also, and I was like, is this just the actual loose working title of this? Like, are we going to have something named the big, beautiful tax bill? And
it wouldn't surprise me at this point.
No.
Nothing surprises me at this point. It's getting to be a problem.
Yeah, it's problematic.
So I wanted to, since the bill failed to get out of committee this week, voted down not just by Democrats on the committee, but by some hardline Republicans, including, can't believe I'm going to say this, Missouri Representative Josh Hawley.
Yeah, I mean, he called it a suicidal.
Yeah.
I do think that does make sense a little bit, though.
It does.
Maybe this is just because he knows who his constituency is.
That's it. I mean, you're talking about 40% of births in this country are covered by Medicaid.
Yeah.
And that's not just people in the cities. That's not just people in blue states. I assure you it's not. So let's kind of talk about some of the things.
I have another question, but I'll bring it
Yeah,
up.
no,
I'll
please.
bring it. Well, so this article is, and perhaps this is another one of our ventures into the Overton window. But when I read a story, it says hardline Republicans.
Yes.
What does that mean? Who is that?
I think your hardline Republicans are the people like Lauren Boebert,
Oh,
Marjorie Taylor Greene, the ones who always get in and try and fuck shit up. I think they are your hardliners.
okay.
So like they're the ones who they don't want to pass this, not just because they like to be obstinate, but because it would raise the debt ceiling.
Okay.
And so that's a big part of why they are against it. So Trump's big, beautiful tax bill.
Mm-hmm.
According to the Bipartisan Joint Committee on Taxation, the GOP's proposed tax provisions would increase the national debt by $5.3 trillion. That's a really big number.
That's a huge number. It's a big, beautiful number.
It's a big, beautiful number.
Yes.
Amen. It's a phenomenal cost that Republicans intend to offset by forcing 10 million Americans off of Medicaid, pushing millions off of food stamps, and increasing healthcare costs. The biggest thing in it that I find the least, I don't want to use the term nuance. There are some things in this bill that are very slimy, but you have to really read to find out why. This is not one of those subtle, slimy things. They want to extend Donald Trump's tax cuts from 2017. It would raise taxes by 74% for people making less than $15,000 a year.
Jesus.
74%.
That's insane.
It also would raise the estate tax exemption up to $15 million. I feel like a lot of what's happening is really, really trying to make sure that wealthy people and their children are taken care of for some indeterminate amount of time and everyone else can go screw off. I think that's going to be a common thread through this. Part of the way that the Republicans want to pay for these tax cuts, $5.3 trillion worth of debt, is by kicking a whole bunch of people off of Medicaid. Medicaid does not only keep people insured, it keeps hospitals, especially rural hospitals, open. Hospitals that service poor people do not make income except from Medicaid. So then if you have hospitals, like, first of all, you have people who can't afford to get health care.
Right.
Who can't afford to have children. Like, these are people who scream from the rooftops that we need to be having more babies. And then you want to kick all of the people off of Medicaid. But it will also close hospitals. And we are already short medical care in this country. There are not enough doctors, not enough nurses, and not enough hospitals to sustain, especially the aging boomer population.
Right.
Like, forget those of us who are, in our 30s, 40s, 50s. All of our parents are getting sick and dying now. Like, they need hospital care. They're also the ones who keep voting for this stuff. So I can't quite wrap my head around it.
Well, they're literally the people working on it.
Right.
I mean, that's, which is in effect like the suspension of disbelief on this, if that's the right terminology. Again, my words are weird today, but a tax bill that benefits the rich and punishes the poor, then a bunch of the people who, if they were not rich, would really need this service, helping to design it.
Yeah. So an interesting thing about cutting Medicaid is how unpopular it is. There is not a single electoral district in the entirety of the country that has more than 15% support for Medicaid cuts. So let's say that is your most right-wing, bright red electoral district. Only 15% of them, not even a whiff of a majority.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, when Josh Hawley said that this was political suicide, he's not wrong.
No, and I was just looking at this, is that Missouri has an overall population of about 6.245 million people as of 2024, and 1.3 million of those people are on Medicaid.
There is this thing that's bubbling up inside of me, and I've said it as a joke a couple of times. I really fear that the reason that these people feel like they are beyond reproach is because they are.
Yeah.
And that we are not having any more elections. Because if we're not having any more elections, they're not rerunning for anything.
Right.
which is also terrifying.
Absolutely.
So there's an interesting thing that is part of this bill that you really had to dig and dig and dig to find, because you can't just kick people off of Medicaid. You have to come up with a reason. You have to give a new policy that these people wouldn't qualify for. So imagine you're a single mother and you have a 9-year-old and you receive Medicaid and you receive food stamps and you are unmarried, you are a single mother. You can be denied Medicaid and food stamps, SNAP, because your child is over the age of 7. They want to cap the dependent age for single parents at 7.
Yeah, that's insane.
If you're married, though, it doesn't matter. The child can be however old.
Okay, what?
Yeah. So if you are a single parent
Yeah.
and you have a 9-year-old,
Yeah.
they stopped qualifying for food benefit 2 years ago based on this policy proposal. However, if you are married and you have a 9-year-old and you're on hard times and you need Medicaid and SNAP, you still qualify.
And that's until they're age 18. Am I correct on that?
So we want 8 and 9-year-olds, but not 7-year-olds to go hungry strictly because they were born to mothers who are no longer married or who weren't married. Or fathers.
Sure.
Fathers who, let's say, are widowers or are divorced and have sole custody. Like, it's not just a woman thing. It's very much a woman thing.
It's very much a woman thing, but it's a single parent thing.
Yes, absolutely. And there's this, when the little conspiracy theory bubble in my head gets going. So if you are a struggling mother working 2 jobs, let's say you have a full-time job, but you only make $25,000 a year at that because it's a minimum wage job. And you're also like door dashing on the side, whatever, just so you can keep a roof over your kid's head. And now you can't feed your 9-year-old because they've taken away your food stamps. The state can come in and say you're an unfit parent and take your child away from you because you can't provide for your child. And then what do you do with a 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old? Throw them in a group home, make them prison labor. To me, this is, I wish I had a little siren that I could like play right here. Because this is conspiracy theory alley that we're entering.
Conspiracy theory alley.
But I do think that there are so many policies happening now that end with this now breaks a law and you are going to jail.
Mm.
And in a time when we are struggling for labor and also refuse to ban prison labor by calling it a form of slavery, which it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's the same thing when we criminalized homelessness. When we said, you may not sleep on the street, you have to go to jail now. Now that's free labor. And that's something that it's stuck in my craw. And anytime I read a story like this, where it's how can we make this as punitive as possible, that's where my brain ends up, which just probably means there's something wrong with this old noodle up here.
I don't know that you're entirely wrong. A lot of this centers on the idea of privatized prisons and the idea that incarceration is a business, like more than a punitive rehabilitation situation, which I don't know was ever really the case in this country. I suppose it was less corporate, perhaps, maybe. But
well, I mean, I don't know that prison was ever a center of rehabilitation, but it was you go there, you do your time, you go home.
True.
You can go work at McDonald's and not get paid for it, which is something I learned recently. They have prison work programs that take you to fast food places. Firefighters. There are especially on the West Coast, entire prison firefighter companies that pay almost nothing. And bonus, you may spend 5 years fighting wildfires. When you get out, if you were a felon, you can't be a firefighter.
I know that in some states that specifically, I only speak to this because I know somebody who went through this, who got their life turned around after getting out of prison and began working on one of the local firefighting cruise.
And I do think that is something that certain municipalities are addressing, but not on a major scale.
Right. And I would say maybe that's an exception or something because it did work for him. He is now a firefighter and has a child and his life is turned around. But I
That's
don't
awesome.
know that that's probably more the exception.
So, speaking of healthcare, again, because I feel like the other than hating women and brown people, the thing Republicans hate most is healthcare. They're proposing levying heavy tax penalties on Americans who purchase individual health insurance plans through marketplaces created under the ACA. Basically, right now, if you are under a certain income level, you can go into the marketplace, you can purchase an insurance policy for you and your family, and they're advancing you tax credits for the premium. And then when you file your taxes, it comes out in the wash. It turns out that they could end up owing the government thousands of dollars if their income somehow exceeds the estimates that they have been provided by the IRS. Or they could be just priced out of it completely. Once those tax incentives start going away and demand goes down, the cost of premiums is going to go up. We talked about food stamps a little bit. 40% of food stamps in 2023 benefited children under 18. They want to shift some of the cost burden into individual states, which if you're Mississippi, which is a net loss state, for every dollar that you make, you actually take from the federal government, you don't give back. That's not going to work.
Right.
They can't afford a food stamp program, but it could affect millions of families, which is insane. Like the other thing we have to consider is groceries are twice what they were 2 years ago.
On that note, is anybody else fascinated by the idea that Donald Trump thinks the term groceries is a term of the past? Have you caught this?
I don't know what you're talking about, but
You don't know what I'm talking about? Well, just time for a little bit of levity, even though it's so stupid. He said this several times, and I think he said it again this week. He's been talking about groceries, and the thing about it that's so funny is that I don't think he understands what they are.
no, I don't think he does either.
And it makes sense. Like this guy's probably never bought groceries, but I can't find the exact quote. But like earlier this week, he was talking about groceries again, and it's all kind of about like that price of eggs and groceries conversation about how costs are coming down. But he said we used to have a term for it. It's called groceries. It's an old-fashioned term. And like there isn't a fucking person on the planet that thinks groceries is some sort of old-timey like uh you know, I was trying to think of the name of an old show and I just blanked on that too, but like, hey, time to go get some groceries, huh?
Right?
This is one thing that I cannot get over, that like you cannot say you're a man of the people and have a limited understanding of the modern day usage of the term groceries. Just insane. So anyway, go ahead. You were talking about groceries.
Well, I mean,
Groceries in 2025? We're talking about that?
uh, it's just, I mean, getting ready to knock a bunch of people off of SNAP when food is the most unaffordable it's ever been is
Right.
just great. A little fun thing that they stuck in there was terminating the IRS direct file program. So if you did your taxes this year, you had the option of going right to the IRS website and filing your taxes.
Yeah.
Because they have the bulk of your information already, and you just basically double check it, submit your W-2, and you're done. It took me about 4 minutes. It was great. They want to get rid of that because companies like Intuit that run TurboTax are super pissed.
I don't even know what to say. Like, I mean, like, let's make taxes more difficult and more expensive.
And more expensive. Yeah.
Like, let's pay more taxes and make the process more difficult.
Because H&R Block and Intuit and whatever other companies are mad that they can't take that market share anymore.
I got an idea. Just don't pay your taxes.
Well, listen, I am starting to become of the mind. Like, I am fine with paying taxes. I think
I
that
am
like
too.
that's what you do. You pay taxes, and in turn, you are cared for as a community. You pay your local taxes, and your streets are maintained, and your, water and sewer service work, and you pay your federal taxes, and you have a military, and in theory, healthcare, and all of these other things. I never said I want my taxes going to blow up small children in the Middle East. Never said that was cool, actually. So no, I don't think from this point forward I will be willingly paying taxes. I do owe the federal government $50 right now, and they can take it from my cold dead hands because apparently I owed them $50 after last year's taxes. So the bill also tried to take a lot of money to help fund the mass deportation efforts from Donald Trump to the extent of about $80 billion for domestic immigration enforcement. That portion of the bill would also help raise additional funds for the Department of Homeland Security by assessing the following fees: $1,000 fee to apply for asylum, $1,000 fee for humanitarian parole, $500 for temporary protected status, $550 for work permits billed every 6 months, $900 to appeal a rejection, and $5,000 for missing a court hearing.
What's the last one? $5,000 for missing a what?
A court hearing.
Jesus Christ.
And that's in addition to any other legal fees that exist right now for someone trying to seek refuge in the United States.
I mean, that seems pretty blatantly just kind of a disincentivization.
Yeah, that's all it is. Like, if you have nothing and you just schlepped here from Venezuela or Chile or wherever on foot with a child on your back, like, no, you don't have $5,000 to apply for asylum. You don't, for you and your child.
Yeah.
I'm reading all of this from a Yahoo News article, and I feel like Yahoo News is generally pretty neutral. Like they're just really just saying stuff. I want to read this section here because it says a whole lot. The little subtitle here is "Giving Trump New Powers to Target Charities." The Trump administration has already made a habit of accusing individuals of terrorism with little evidence as a way to justify actions that clearly violate the laws, legal principles, and basic rights that are supposed to govern the nation. See unlawful imprisonment of hundreds of migrants in Salvadoran gulags. While the government has already targeted migrants and pro-Palestine protesters with broad powers and specious claims, charities and nonprofits could be next. That is a very loaded paragraph from Yahoo News.
Yeah.
The Ways and Means Reconciliation text revives a proposal that would give the Trump administration the power to unilaterally terminate the tax-exempt status of disfavored nonprofits on the grounds that those profits are, quote, terrorist supporting organizations that have provided, quote, material support or resources to terrorist groups. The measure would likely aid Trump's crackdown on pro-Palestinian protesters, though officials could potentially try to use it to target climate groups. I think of everything I've read here, like, a lot of the things that Republicans propose are because they're greedy and they're selfish and they're stupid. Like, oh, we want to pay less taxes because we're all rich. I don't agree with them, but I can understand the rationale. I do not understand this one. I mean, I do if we live in a fascist state.
I mean, then it makes total sense.
Maybe I've just been in denial for a while.
Ever since 9/11, we have really used that word terrorist. It has really become like an all-encompassing net. We're at the point where it is completely reasonable to go into your minimum wage subway job and say you can't work next Sunday and have your manager to call you a terrorist.
I call my dog a terrorist every day.
Right,
he is one.
Lovingly.
But like, exactly.
But I think what I'm talking about is that it's being used in general just to, I mean, we know this already. That term is being used as what is granted to us in the Constitution, which is you don't have to be in agreement with the government. And I do know, but I don't know how much longer how many more examples we're going to need where we kind of have to, I'll close the door on that. I mean, I know that like I don't do anything really crazy on social media, but I'm noticing that jobs are asking for like all of your social media handles again. And I'm like, this climate, excuse me, like what on earth assumption should I give any potential employer that I'm going to not be considered for a job because I sympathized with pro-Palestinian sentiment,
Right,
or
because I donated to someone's mutual aid request.
right. So it's insane. Yeah. I wanted to say one thing on that Yahoo News story. I think it was the one that you sent me.
Mhm.
Oh, this was actually a link to Rolling Stone, so never mind. It was on Yahoo News, and it was
You know
propagated.
what's really funny? I think
What's
it
that?
is actually a Rolling Stone story, but it's on Yahoo News
Are they both
because
on that? Both of the ones you sent me?
you can't see this, but it says Rolling Stone at the top, but it's a
Yeah,
Yahoo
yeah, I see
uh,
that too.
website.
That's interesting. I haven't really noticed that as much in the past. Have you?
Um, no, usually it'll just say like from an article in Rolling Stone. It won't like combine them so much.
Well, that's why I was interested in what you were saying of like Yahoo News having like an actual active voice in an
So
article.
I guess in doing some retrospect thinking here, it's a Rolling Stone article. So of course it has a voice.
Yeah, because when I was reading this, I thought it was a Yahoo News thing, and like the last three words in the story I was reading are "What the hell." I was like, okay, Yahoo News, like what got into you today?
So the one thing that happened, I don't like to talk about Joe Biden. I like to be done with that era of history. But when he signed the Inflation Reduction Act, one of the things that came out of that were massive amounts of subsidies for green energy. Massive. 3 years later, the law has pumped over $843 billion worth of subsidy fueled clean energy investments into struggling communities, many in red districts and states, which is why some Republicans are begging their party to leave the IRA alone. But the GOP serves a higher power, and his name is Trump. They want to get rid of the electric vehicle tax credit, get rid of technology neutral production and investment tax credits that support the development of renewable energy plants, eliminate tax credit sales by companies that were already reaching sustainability targets, and repeal tax credits for residential use of sustainable energy sources like solar power. So if you put a solar system on your roof, you can no longer claim a tax credit for it. This is something that bugs me a whole lot. So the next part of this is blocking state and local AI regulation.
Yeah, this one had me fired up.
I am very opposed to AI. I think we need to be done with it. I think that it is a $1 trillion industry made of nothing.
Agreed.
And that when that bubble breaks, boy, are we in trouble.
Yeah, it's not far down the road either.
No, it's not, because it's shit or get off the pot time with AI, and they're not doing it. So the Energy and Commerce Committee has included a 10-year provision that would prevent any state or subdivision from enforcing any law or regulation regulating artificial intelligence models, artificial intelligence systems, or automated decision systems during the 10-year period. So part of the reason I referenced this in the first story I talked about was I talked about my insurance company. And I am very lucky to have United Healthcare as my health insurance provider. Which funny, they have a dead CEO and now one getting ready to go to jail. That's cool.
Yeah, they're on a roll.
Yep. Can't imagine what the third thing's going to be.
That secret third thing.
Uh, they use AI in their claim approval systems.
Mm-hmm.
There's currently a class action lawsuit against them because 90% of their AI generated claim denials ended up overturned.
Wow.
Now, what does that mean? It means that doctors have to put off procedures until they know that they are actually covered. Doctors have to spend more time fighting with insurance companies to get things covered and go through the appeals process. And patients do not receive care. They don't receive adequate care because they're under the impression it won't be covered. So, Luigi, we salute you. That's pretty insane. The other things that they've talked about using AI for are things like sentencing for people found guilty of crime, or even predicting criminal patterns of behavior. AI doesn't work. The thing about AI is we can talk about how amazing it would be if it could do these things, but it can't. We'll make sure we share this with when we share the link, because I'm going to try and talk about it audio. style, but you really need to see a visual of it. So AI gets its information by scraping data, right, from the internet. It reads articles, it reads. The thing it doesn't understand is formatting. So in this particular case, AI scraped an article that is formatted in two columns, column A, column B. The same way you would read a newspaper article. You read column A, then you go up to column B and keep reading.
Right.
Because it doesn't understand that that's how formats work, it lined up two words in the adjacent columns.
Okay.
So the sentence was supposed to read, "It is by no means certain what happens to the vegetative cell wall when the spore is released." Instead, what it did was connect to the sentence on the adjacent column. So now there is a term called vegetative electron microscopy, which is popping up in scientific papers now because people are using the information that AI has pulled as sources.
This is again goes back to the basic concept of people do not understand the destructive nature of something that gets propagated so much, which essentially is just slop.
Mm-hmm.
It's slopping together words, it's slopping together concepts, and people are using it as factual. And it's like, I listen, there was a family member of mine who was in town, and he's an engineer. He's an engineer, and he's talking about the usages, and it's always the same thing, right? It's always like, well, I understand the dangers of AI, but I do it in this one way. It's almost always like, because I can't write, like 99% of the time. And the truth is, he can write. Went through college, got an engineering degree. He's been in his job for 25 years. When did he stop writing?
You know, something about that real quick, can you imagine spending $100,000 on a college education to learn how to write a chat GPT prompt?
No, I can't.
Because that's what seems to be happening. Like, oh, we're just writing all of our essays with chat GPT. And okay, well, cool. Enjoy that student loan debt for the rest of your life. Why bother?
My point on this is that in this discussion where he's talking about the quote unquote good uses of AI, and it's in relation to his experience, his work. And then breathlessly, I'm talking to him about his kids and how they're very into their virtual headsets and their video games, and how he's going to great lengths to monitor them. And he doesn't speak at all to the dangers of AI for children, specifically on Instagram and Facebook. I believe 404 Media did a really good story on fake therapists
Mm-hmm.
with fake license numbers. Like, you can commend how much AI might make a couple hours at your job better, but if you're not willing to acknowledge the fact that, like, this is a danger to your own children who are really impressionable at an age where they are starting to get online, then you are missing the whole point.
Now, I do have to say something funny that happened. I know you're not a Twitter user anymore. Um, and we're not going to dive into the story because I certainly don't care.
Okay.
But the US started allowing in South African white farmer refugees this past week,
Yeah.
who are not being oppressed. Like they have to give the land back that they've stolen for generations, and they're real sad about it. But Twitter has a AI companion called Grok, which is a stupid name. But every time you asked Grok anything on Twitter that day, it said literally, "White genocide is not real."
I know. I
And
saw
there
that.
is no, and I hate AI. I hate it, but sometimes it's at least funny. And I laugh like just all day. People were just reposting Grok responses that were like, oh, if you want to make salad dressing, use this one part this and one part this. White genocide is not real.
Right. And it's really funny. Don't get me wrong, that's not lost on me. That's a great example of how it doesn't work.
Of
That,
course.
like,
Of
somebody can get in
course.
there and influence something, and it, like, brain pills the program so badly that it can only respond on one topic.
And you would think like that would make all of these people, especially like these right wing AI people or these libertarian right wing AI people, like cautious. Like,
Yeah.
oh, wait, maybe we're rushing this. But no, because it's all about making money. And so Grok probably has a net value of a few $1 billion, and that's all it does.
Right. Just on this bill, really quick, with that, specifically that AI addition to the bill, I'm trying to wrap my head around how a passage of that, where it's going to give a 10-year window to AI, to like a hands-off AI approach.
Mm-hmm.
Do these people not look at other things that they are trying to do? Specifically, they're trying to regulate social media. How are you going to take your hands off AI and regulate social media in the same breath? How are you going to regulate Meta and X and all these things? Because that's what there's a proposal there. On top of it, there's been a bill introduced to criminalize all porn.
And
But like you can I know exactly, but you can go then on. I believe it was Grok, or forgive me, I don't remember which format that is, but like there is an AI that where you can ask the AI on a social media site, it's got to be X, to immediately deep fake something. And then obviously we get into the ideas of deep fake porn. How are they, like, what are they doing? Like, there isn't any logical sense on how you can pump AI up everybody's ass and regulate its usage on social media at the same time.
I think that part of the problem, and I'm not going to say all of the problem, a big part of the problem is lawmakers are old and don't understand technology. And I don't mean all of them, but if you were to ask Chuck Schumer what Grok was, he wouldn't know.
Yeah.
And if you were to, like, when you have an aging legislation like that, all they're seeing is dollar signs. That's all they see are dollar signs. They don't see us as people, but they see that right now AI is the most expensive thing out there. Whether it's valid or not, that's what they're seeing. And they're taking Elon Musk and uh, Mark Zuckerberg's word for it because, they're the richest men in the world. And obviously, people who get that rich are smart. Like, they don't understand that it's a big house of cards. And I agree with you, but like, they don't understand that if you eliminate porn but don't also eliminate AI, you're just going to get AI generated porn.
Yeah. I mean,
That doesn't make sense. They don't understand that because they don't understand technology.
just on a really basic level, so May 4th comes around and we've got all these politicians AIing images of them as Star Wars characters. Chuck
Mm-hmm.
Schumer gets up and looks at it and he doesn't understand what it is.
I don't think he did it. I
No, I
don't
don't
think
know
any
that
of
he
the
did
actual
it.
politicians do it. I think their
I'm saying
staff
that he
does it.
gets up and he fires up Twitter or
Sure,
whatever is,
he knows
any.
it's not real, but he doesn't
Okay.
understand the concepts behind it. He just goes, "Oh, hey, they made a funny picture." Doesn't matter that used an entire tree's worth of oxygen and water to do it.
Well, that concept I understand, but I guess when you're able to fake an image of the president being Taylor Swift, would you not like make a leap to thinking that maybe somebody could make fake porn?
No, I don't think so because I don't think
My
they think
God.
anything.
Oh my God. Like
I'm not saying that
seriously.
you and I don't think those things. That's a rational thought. These people are so blinded by profits and power that they do not have rational thought anymore. Otherwise, if they did, there wouldn't be a woman acting as an incubator in Georgia right now.
Well, just to talk about irrational things here, if I can find this again, but I found the quote I was looking for, and this
Perfect.
one, this one, uh, this one's great. This is from April 2nd. Donald Trump says, "An old-fashioned term that we use, groceries. I use it on the campaign. It's such an old-fashioned term, but a beautiful term. Groceries. It says a bag with different things in it."
Oh my God. How is this man the president?
The word says it's a bag with different things in it.
I could get a bag with different things in it. The one last little part of that was to eliminate a $200 excise tax on the transfer of firearm silencers,
I know, I saw that one.
which is, like, honestly, of all of this, the thing I care about least. But
Yeah.
also, it's just like a just a little fuck you at the end.
I'm not exactly sure who is asking for this other than people who use silencers, and I don't know. I don't know that those are the people that need the most help.
Hmm. So, um, Rep. David Kustoff, Republican from Tennessee, of course, said in a statement on X, I proposed the policy that would eliminate the tax on suppressors. This would be more than $1.5 billion in savings for gun owners over the next 10 years. What the hell?
I speechless. No idea. I'm silenced.
We're going to end this episode on a high note, and that's going to come relatively quickly. But something happened in the past couple of days. As the podcast meteorologist, and by meteorologist, I mean I watch a lot of weather videos, a very large track tornado went from St. Louis to eastern Kentucky Friday night, over 500 miles. That storm traveled. The scarring it left behind, because you can see what they call a tornado scar, is unreal, just demolished. At least 14 people have died. I think if you combine St. Louis and Eastern Kentucky, it's something like 27. Governor Beshear from Kentucky got on the air and said, listen, we expect there are going to be entire blocks of casualties. So there will be more deaths announced. In all of my TikTok scrolling, because I do enjoy a scroll on the old talk every now and then.
Sure. Scrolling it.
Something that I kept seeing was there are multiple processes to a tornado warning. When you have what's called a radar observed tornado, they will issue a tornado warning, but they do not issue a tornado emergency, a get your ass into shelter now alert, until a tornado is visually observed. It becomes an observed tornado. The Jackson, Kentucky National Weather Service office is understaffed. It's understaffed due to cuts by DOGE. Because it's understaffed, there was no overnight meteorologist on site.
Jeepers.
Which means that was never escalated to a tornado emergency. That warnings happened far later than they should have. You could see the storm coming. It literally came from 500 miles away. And people were not properly warned. And now tens of people are dead because there were not enough meteorologists, because Elon Musk fired them.
Yeah, I mean, this is beyond insane. I never imagined there would ever be a point in which anyone decided that being prepared for potential national disasters would A, become politicized, and B, would become unnecessary. It's absolutely astounding to me. This is truly one of those things where it seems like it's going to take a lot of people dying for anything to change.
And I'm starting to feel like somewhere in a little like suggestion box in GOP headquarters or wherever it is, maybe at the White House, there's a number written down, and it's the number of people that have to die to make it more than just the cost of doing business.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling that number is really, really high.
Yeah, that's
Bill Paxton would not approve of this.
No. Bill Paxton. R.I.P.
R.I.P.
Yes.
He big dead.
Yeah. Apparently even Bill Paxton dying won't save this country.
Nope. The other thing, like, there's a massive record-breaking heat dome boiling the Gulf of Mexico right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens during hurricane season, when both FEMA and NOAA and the NWS have been stripped.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, welcome back. Lots of good news.
Right?
Jesus Christ.
Maybe we should have skipped this week too.
Yeah, almost.
Oh man. I forgot what it was like to wake up on a Sunday morning and sit in the soup,
Yeah, true. I did too. It's a little feels a little overwhelming. It did this morning before we started, but in some ways it feels a little cathartic because I feel like I probably don't need to dig into the news much over the next couple hours. I got grass to look at, see if it's growing. It's been at least 3 hours since I checked last time. Yeah.
Okay, take us out. Take us out on a good note.
So I found this to be great, and the backstory for me on this is that I have a 5-year-old niece, and she just completed. She's got one more game left, but she is towards the end of her first soccer season.
Oh,
And 5-year-olds playing soccer is hilarious.
oh yeah, yeah.
It started with
Lots of children falling.
lots of falling, lots
Yes.
of like, should I touch the ball? Do I kick the ball? We had a girl yesterday who was like just not there mentally. And by not there, I mean like the coach like called a timeout and was like, I don't know, I'll just make up a name. Grace, come here. And she came over, but she'd been rolling in the grass, and he said, "You need to stand up and stop pulling grass." Like that was literally the thing. And so, it's truly a beautiful thing. It's really fun to watch. And especially at that age, I mean, there are obviously exceptions because there are some family members screaming, kick the ball 100 times over and over again. And no matter how many times you remind them that they're 5-year-olds, when they're screaming, what are they doing? And it's like, they're 5. And then they're like, but, and then I'm like, they're 5. Like there is no but, like they're 5 years old. Give me a fucking break, man.
Yeah, but how can someone live vicariously through their child being a professional soccer player if they don't torture them at 5?
Perfect transition. So I came across this story in Maine, where a high school runner who was transgender got first place in a 1600-meter race. And the student who finished second, her name was Annalise Feldman. She was a freshman at Yarmouth High School in Maine, was being used as a pawn piece in the continual attack on transgender people. And at this point, like it's not it's an attack, but it is an obsession, and it is truly insane that people do not want these people to exist and are obsessed with their gender. And it is unbelievable to me that this continues to happen and doesn't seem to be slowing down at all. So, anyway, this girl wrote a letter to the editor that ran in the Portland Press Herald. And I just want to read some of it. The first 3 paragraphs really impressed me. In fact, maybe I'll read, there's only 4 paragraphs, so maybe I'll read the whole thing. But she writes that Representative Laurel Libby, a Republican from Auburn, Maine, recently used my second place finish in the 1600-meter run and that of my teammate in the 800-meter run to malign Soren Stark Chesa, the trans-identified athlete who finished first. One of the reasons I chose to run cross country and track is the community. Teammates cheering each other on, athletes from different schools coming together, and the fact that personal improvement is valued as much, if not more than, the place we finished. Last Friday, I ran the fastest 1600-meter race I've ever run in middle school or high school track and earned a varsity status by my school standard. I'm extremely proud of the effort I put into the race and the time that I achieved. The fact that someone else finished in front of me didn't diminish the happiness I felt after finishing that race. I don't feel like first place was taken from me. Instead, I feel like a happy day was turned ugly by a bully who's using children to make political points. We are all just kids trying to make our way through high school. Participating in sports is the highlight of high school for some kids. No one was harmed by Soren's participation in the girls' track meet, but we are all harmed by the hateful rhetoric of bullies like Rep. Libby who want to take sports away from kids just because of who they are. So, this is the best thing I read this week. It speaks more precisely to this topic than hardly any Democratic leadership I've seen. And what I think impresses me most about it within this is a kid making the realization personal improvement is valued as much as, if not more than, the place we finish. Going back to the 5-year-olds, they have no concept of winning or losing. Participation is everything. It's certainly fun for the kids to score a goal, and you can tell they like that. But all of the stress, and this isn't going to be news to anyone, but like, what are they doing? Kick the ball. Oh my God, we're getting smoked. All of these things happening at a 5-year-old's game have truly made me read this week and be like, this kid gets it, because the idea that everything is placed on where you finish is insane when it comes to anything sports related. And it drives this transgender hatred in sports, is which I don't think I've read anywhere where somebody who has finished seventh as a transgender athlete has been publicized at all.
That's actually not true. There is a woman who has managed to leverage her competing against a transgender player into a perfect right-wing talking head career.
But I was saying, like, you don't read stories about a transgender person finishing seventh and anybody protesting to it.
There is a case of this, and I can't remember her name. Her name is Riley Gaines.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. I'd rather not even talk about her.
Well, sure. But she was a college swimmer that took sixth. She tied with a trans player, and they gave the trans player fifth and her sixth. And she has leveraged it into an entire hate campaign.
Well, that is a true example. There's also there's a woman in the world of skateboarding who kind of tried to do the same thing too. Let me just say there's not as much of attention. And you're right, Riley Gaines has become a big voice in it. But I think when we're getting back to this letter, the idea that adults are screaming about stolen valor when the kids are not feeling it is insane to me. I don't know if it's any sort of revelation. The idea that politicians or parents are doing this comes from a really ugly place, projecting upon kids, and it's politicians projecting on kids what are the important lessons from this or that, when the kids seem to have a better grasp of what that is when it's happening.
Absolutely.
I think that, and it still exists today, but there was like this whole insane debate on the concepts of a participation trophy.
Right.
Been thinking about this because I opened up an old box of like all my track and field stuff from like junior high and all that stuff. And yeah, I was fast, so I did finish first. You know what I also did? I got like a 5th place brown ribbon right there too. I don't remember any of that stuff except being there.
Well, and I think that we have done such a terrible job of believing that the only way to be successful is to be the best, quote unquote, and like to finish first place. And you said it very well. You know, yeah, you may get a medal for first, second, or third place, but if you started that race in 10th place and made it to 5th, that's a big win.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I don't think I encapsulated all my thoughts on that, but like I found that letter to be deeply touching. And, you know, when the news isn't great, I think that was something that I read and I was like, thank you, kid.
Yeah, maybe the kids are all right after all.
Yeah, like a little bit of that for sure. It seemed like, again, maybe we will get to a point where these kids grow up and they're like, you people are all fucking worm brained. Like, we just want to be people and let people be people.
Yeah, we just want to run.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good place to end it. Forgot how exhausting this is.
It really is.
But go touch grass or grass seed.
We're not in the touching part. We're in the watch grass part. This is the more difficult part of the process.
It requires more patience.
Yes.
All right. It's been swell, my friend. See you next week.
All right. See you then. Hey, thanks for listening to the Don't Walk Into Traffic podcast. We're a new podcast with new episodes each week. We're not actually that new. This is season 2, so we're an old podcast. Well, somewhat old. Anyway, we're a podcast with new episodes each week. You can find us on social media at DWITpod on X/Twitter and on Blue Sky. There you can also find links to the stories and the topics we discussed. If you want to send us an email, send that to dwitpod@gmail.com. Thanks again for tuning in. We will see you next week. Bye-bye.